Penn State football already has 3 running back commitments in the class of 2025. So why are the Nittany Lions bringing in another running back target for this final weekend of official visits?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's the final round of official visits, and Jabree Wallace-Coleman, a running back target for Penn State, is set to visit, but Penn State has 3 running back commitments already, and Locked On Auburn just posted its most recent episode saying it's time to flip Alvin Henderson. What is going on? This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Brian Smith is back. Brian, it's great to see you again. We just did a recruiting update. Now we have a full official visit preview here. And of course, since we're talking about recruiting, today's episode is brought to you by the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, we'll start off with the most important, most intriguing recruitments for this final weekend. Go to the next group of prospects like, hey, Penn State might take them. They might land these commitments, and then kind of the long shot visitors of the group here. So beginning with just, again, what is going on? Because Alvin Henderson tells On3, James Franklin and J1 Sider know I'm locked in. And I'm like, okay, we just got done with a conversation a week ago saying that Henderson seems to be saying all the right things. His visit seems to be going well. But then Jabree Wallace-Coleman is still visiting a weekend later, and Locked On Auburn feels pretty good about still flipping Alvin Henderson. Brian, what gives?
I don't believe anything Alvin says. It's flat out what I think. Not one word. Until he signs somewhere, that's the only thing that matters. But he still talks to Auburn on a regular basis. Make that what you will. I've heard a lot of chatter about him flipping and rather soon. I don't know what to tell you, man, but always read actions, not just the player. The kid they're bringing in to Happy Valley this weekend is a heck of a running back.
Yes, he is.
Local kid. Would they do that just for fun?
Yeah,
no.
Just because.
You're not taking 4 running backs in a modern recruiting class. So they think Alvin's flipping too. That's how I read that. I read actions, not words.
That's a very good point. You can say whatever you want, but Penn State, this goes back to just recruiting basics and the standards that the Nittany Lions have when it comes to recruiting here. If you intend to still take visits, then don't commit. So if Alvin Henderson behind the scenes is still showing up to Auburn periodically, is still in contact with the coaching staff on a regular basis with the Tigers and Hugh Freeze, I don't blame him. You know, this is recruiting, right? I don't blame Auburn for doing this. All is fair until your name is on the dotted line here. But the way Penn State operates, if you are continuing to take visits, that's why, look, Keandre Barker, one of those other running back commits, was set to visit Arkansas. And what happens? Cancels the visit, says he's locked in. Okay. Something probably had a conversation with Penn State. Are you all in, or do you want to take other visits? Like, what is it? You're committed. Are you committed or are you not? You can apply this same standard here now to Alvin Henderson, but it seems like Penn State is hedging its bets. If you're hearing rumors that Alvin Henderson, we've always talked about it. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I guess that when is sooner rather than later.
If he's not committed to Auburn by the end of the summer, I'll be surprised.
Okay.
Simple as that. I don't have a date.
Yeah.
But there's all of a sudden, there's a lot of chatter on the Auburn side. So I'll leave it at that. And it's, a lot. So that's happened before, though, with Alvin, and he didn't commit and he waited and waited. Then he committed to Penn State, which everybody down here is like, what?
Yeah.
So it just, because I'd seen him like 3 out of 4 times I went to Auburn for practices, I saw Alvin.
Yeah.
So then he committed to Penn State like a week later. Yeah. So he's an unusual kid to kind of follow.
Yeah, if Locked On Auburn, I wouldn't be as suspicious if, okay, like, hey, Alvin Henderson said all these great things about Penn State, but then Locked On Auburn follows it up with, get ready because it's time to flip Alvin Henderson away from Penn State. Like that's your reaction. It's time to read the tea leaves here. Just be aware that this is a possibility, not of if, but when. How about other prospects that are don't cause a whirlwind in the news cycle here? JaDon Blair, JaDon Blair is an elite prospect, a very, very talented safety, and Penn State missed on another one of its priority safety targets in Kanoa Winston. It's really down, I feel, to it's Notre Dame or bust. I think if Penn State can pull off an upset here, that is the biggest threat to, I guess, Penn State would be the biggest threat to Notre Dame because they lead his recruitment and seem to have been that way for a long time. But a 6'4" safety, you can't go wrong with this kind of commitment.
He's a great player. He could run the alleys. He's got a lot of speed, a lot of length. Everything I've been told is similar to you. Mm-hmm. Unless something happens that's unforeseen, he's going to go to Notre Dame. But I believe they were his first offer, talking about Penn State. Okay. They're a school that's been very good in recruiting him, which is common for the Nittany Lions. They do a great job. He just likes Notre Dame. And Marcus Freeman can recruit. There's no doubt about that. They've got a great defensive staff. So I don't know if Penn State can pull it off, but that's why you bring the kids in and you see what happens. You have nothing to lose. So he's a kid that can help you early. You're going to recruit him until he signs with the Irish. And again, great player.
Again, Penn State doesn't have a true safety commit. We just talked about Jameer Joseph. Yes, he's a cornerback, but he's so versatile that he could move to safety if Penn State sees it that way. I think at the end of the day, they're just recruiting defensive backs. They're still in a pretty good standing with a Florida prospect in Antonio Branch. So this isn't, yes, you would like, ideally Penn State would have liked to have gotten Kanoa Winston and JaDon Blair as those two safety prospects. They're probably going to end up missing on both. They're not going to stop recruiting them, but that's just the nature of it. He is an important priority target for them. On3 considers him one of the best defenders in this entire class for 2025. But it's like I said, we're starting with the priority recruits. The final one in this group is a defensive end because Penn State needs pass rushers. They don't have any defensive linemen, and I'm actually going to include Zahir Mathis in this because there are rumors, there's information out there that Penn State is trying to get Zahir Mathis on campus, Pennsylvania native, verbally committed to Ohio State, but could they potentially get him on campus for an official visit alongside Cortez Harris, who's from the state of Maryland, another good defensive end prospect? If you can get both of them on campus for the final weekend of official visits, that is really good news for Penn State in a recruiting season that's been just up and down, a roller coaster, as I've described it.
Penn State is par for the course, by the way. Just to put it in perspective for Nittany Lions
up and down. Yeah, they bogeyed, they parred, they birdied.
An eagle. It's wild.
Everything.
This past weekend, I've lived in Florida, so I follow all the big programs there. Miami, Florida State all had a bunch of visits. 0 commitments between the 3. That's how wild recruiting is. So you can't get caught up in one kid, one day, one decision. You got to look at the sum of all parts. And like you said, getting these kids on campus, Penn State does about as good a job as anybody in the country with their on-campus official visit and game day atmosphere. They'll do it again this fall, whiteout and all that. Tremendous job. They're going to get a couple of kids before signing day. Mm-hmm. You and I are like, I don't know. But they're going to have a couple of kids they wow. I guarantee it. They do it every year. So just let it play out and let's see how this goes. But again, Zach's right. It's going to be up and down.
I will never criticize Penn State for being able to get the recruits' attention. You piqued my interest. That's what a lot of these recruits say. And normally 9 times out of 10, they walk away saying, hey, they'll say things like, I was absolutely stunned by the expectations. They exceeded my expectations. We saw that with Taz Williams in a recent interview. And then there's just other prospects that just really like Penn State, but it might be too far away from home. Now you have NIL factoring in to a lot of recruitments where it's like, yeah, Penn State won the recruiting battle, but I can't pass up this NIL offer from said other school.
That's part of it. The NIL stuff.
New age.
The NIL stuff, let me clarify something here. There's 2 parts to this. LSU came out of the gates red hot this year in recruiting. They got Bryce Underwood, etc.
Yes.
But they spent a ton of their NIL money up front. And now a bunch of kids have visited LSU like, where's my money? There isn't. And all of a sudden, LSU is a lot cooler on the recruiting trail. Be careful for what you ask. Yeah. So you got to get kids that want to be there, not mercenaries. I think Penn State in the long run, even if they don't get as many top 5 kind of classes, will have more kids that'll stick into the program, that will redshirt, go through, do the right things, and they'll have more seniors and 50-year seniors when other schools are having scrambling because at whatever position, pick one. They had 2 kids at the same spot that transferred because they're unhappy with their NIL package. And then they're in a terrible position at one spot that everybody could just attack them. And even though they got a great roster, otherwise they're in trouble. I'll bet you money Penn State's not in that situation in a couple of years where some of these other schools using NIL are going to struggle.
Yeah, Penn State doesn't do the upfront money, but at least they stick to the blueprint. I will commend them for that. They say this is how we're going to recruit, and they haven't folded their hand yet. This is how they're going to approach it, and it's worked for the most part. Now there's still plenty of other recruits on campus that we haven't even talked about yet. One of them is a legacy that, yes, Penn State's missed out on other legacy prospects, but this one actually makes a lot of sense. We'll discuss him and others on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to its peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more are available to you. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into that MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So that legacy prospect, if you haven't heard about him, you'll probably recognize the name. LaVar Arrington II. That is right. LaVar Arrington's son is going to be on campus for an official visit. This one, from what I've heard, what I've gathered, again, asking the right people the right questions. This isn't just blind. This isn't a blind guess. But Penn State taking LaVar Arrington II in its class when it already has 3 linebacker commitments. Again, Deshaun Burnett could move down to defensive end, so that's kind of factored in. There's also now DJ McClary taking other visits. Manny Diaz prospect. Manny Diaz goes to Duke, and now McClary, who's from New Jersey, potentially visited Rutgers recently. Penn State does need linebacker recruits. So LaVar Arrington II is now not only a want, he's a need, and he comes from one of the greatest linebacker, one of the family of one of the greatest linebackers in Penn State history, one of the greatest Penn State players in football history. That's cool when you see that kind of tradition come back around. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what the young man's aspirations are. Usually in those situations, they really want it or they go with the opposite. I have no idea what he's doing, but that's cool. I remember LaVar getting recruited, and like everybody knew that he was a guy, and Penn State had to beat out all the normal suspects for him. But yes, that's cool, and I hope that they have success with that, because I like things like that in college football that's different than the NFL. There's certain guys that go play for the same team their dad did, but it's still a business. Yes, it's different with college and all the tradition with it. So I hope that kind of works out. That's cool. James Franklin and LaVar Arrington have had a very good relation. Words cannot describe how strong their relationship is. So this is kind of, I don't want to say it's been in the works. It's been planned. Again, LaVar Arrington II has been on the West Coast. So it made sense if those Pac-12 schools like an Oregon, a USC, a Washington, a UCLA, any of them would be more aligned with his recruitment. But it still kind of seemed like Penn State's always been in front. I anticipate a commitment. It's a feel-good story. LaVar Arrington II, it's hard to say, hey, he's like his father. He's going to be jumping over the line of scrimmage. He's going to be flying across the football field. He's going to be a game wrecker, cause havoc wherever he can. He's not quite there yet. He is a developmental prospect, but it's not to say with what his instincts, it's not to say that he can't raise the bar for himself, but to think that he's going to be this 5-star prospect right out of the gate, like LaVar Arrington Sr., LaVar Arrington I, temper the expectations, allow him to be the player that he needs to be.
Yeah, if they know each other that well, I wasn't cognizant of that kind of relationship between James and LaVar.
Oh yeah, they get along very well. Yeah,
that means they're going to get a visit. That means they're going to be in the race, barring the kid again just not wanting to go where his dad did. And that happens. Doubt that's going to be the case though. So again, I hope it works out for Penn State, because those are the stories that have always made me follow college football and college football recruiting.
Oh yeah,
it makes it kind of fun. The California thing's interesting too. Of course, Arrington's got money for days now. He's lived all over the place. He's played the NFL for a long time. I'm curious to see what his kid is like, because when LaVar came into college, he was hungry. Like, as a freshman,
yes, you
could see it. So a lot of pressure on his kid having his father's name. That's pretty cool though.
I mean, the build is there. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. You would like him to be, again, could he top out at 6'4", 230? Maybe at the end of the game. Again, that's what he's listed based on the recruiting site. See, and what I constantly find out from you is like, oh yeah, that's wrong. So he might be 210, 220.
Oh yeah, they change
as we sit
quickly
here right now.
Oh yeah. It can happen quickly. There's a kid I know that enrolled early at Alabama, went from 160 to 190 in 3-4 months.
Yeah.
So these weights change pretty rapidly nowadays.
So he's got the ideal size. It's just he's long-term development. Don't expect him to hit the ground running right out of the gate. Probably a redshirt candidate as well. The other two prospects that, Penn State, again, Dwayne Galloway is another defensive back that is going to be in this last round of official visits. And I'll lump him together with just another, because it's starting to get crowded. Penn State has 3 true cornerback commitments. Jameer Joseph could flip to safety, maybe, but he's a true cornerback first. Braswell Thomas is a wide receiver, and why I'm putting Galloway and Thomas together is because it seems like Penn State has already fulfilled its goals. It's not to say you can't, this is icing on the cake if you're able to land the likes of Galloway and Thomas, but Penn State seems to be set with what it has at cornerback and at wide receiver. So never say never. I think Braswell Thomas could be an eventual commitment for Penn State, maybe Galloway too. But if they look around and say, it's too crowded, I'm going to go elsewhere, I don't blame them.
If you're in that situation and it's only June, that means you've prepared well. So you have some guys on the back burner, sort of towards the front, but do you want to waste a visit now? Or would you wait, bring them in for the whiteout or something after some kid decommits? Those are the types of conversations that college coaches have to have about that guy that's on the fence. If we lose somebody, he's the most likely kid, etc. It's really hard because you're guessing to a certain degree, but that's why these guys make millions of dollars to coach too.
Yeah, and I know what people might be thinking. Oh, Penn State only has 1 true wide receiver commit in Lyric Samuel. Well, they're in really good standing with Lex Cyrus. I would say I'd add Brandon Finney to this conversation. Now, he's not verbally committed and he could be looking elsewhere, but Penn State, again, that McDonough High School connection in the state of Maryland, that's also, he's listed as an athlete. He could play defensive back or wide receiver. So that kind of checks 2 boxes, right? He's either a defensive back or a wide receiver, so you're set there. And then they impressed Taz Williams. A week ago, hey, Michigan's in the lead for Taz. I'm not anticipating anything here, but now Penn State again, they piqued his interest, so they're firmly in the conversations there. So that's why if Penn State's wide receiver room and defensive back room suddenly become a little too crowded, they missed out on these commitments. No, that's not the case. You can only take so many prospects, especially at one position.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Penn State knows it's standing. You or I would have heard something about receiver concern if they didn't think they were to get at least 1 or 2 more guys. So, yeah, we haven't. So what's that tell you? Now, Penn State does a good job analyzing their scenario. They'll get some of those players. Now they just got to finalize on some key players elsewhere.
And don't forget about Jeff Exener as well. That's another. So there you have Lyric Samuel, Lex Cyrus, Jeff Exener, potential of Brandon Finney, Taz Williams, right? like I said, at the end of the day, Braswell could be a commitment, but not it. They would have to lose those other one. Those are significant recruiting losses. And then you're pulling the fire alarm on this show here with me, Brian. But we'll wrap up with the Florida natives. Again, you've covered the SEC and national recruiting for a long time. You've been down in Florida, now covering Auburn, everybody else. You do Florida State. So these prospects well. There are ones that, again, they're long shots, but actually one of them is definitely a need for Penn State with where they stand on the offensive line. That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And since this is a recruiting episode, let's talk again about the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users actually don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours, within a day. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn understands that small businesses are wearing tons and tons of hats and might not necessarily have the time to devote to hiring. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, quicker, and more intuitive. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So be one of them. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So that offensive lineman that I think Penn State truly needs is Max Buchanan. And Brian, thank goodness you are the host of Locked On Seminoles, because Max Buchanan, interior offensive lineman, Sanford, Florida. It seems like Florida State has his attention. As the host, what have you heard? Is he in good standing with them? How's the relationship with the Florida State Seminoles?
Well, that's a situation where you've got a lot of guys involved, really good player. And like I was telling somebody earlier today, the state of Florida and the kids in general down south, there's a trend right now. They're all visiting, but they're not committing. Like the big three this past weekend, Miami, Florida State didn't get commitments between them. So it's a little hard for me to project what all is going on. I know some of these kids are getting money just to take visits now, not just commit, but to take visits. But Florida State does about as good a job as anyone with evaluating and everything else. So I don't like betting against any of the big three with Penn State. But Penn State has been surprisingly the last couple of years really good with a bunch of Florida guys.
Yeah.
So
it's J1 Sider.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good recruiter, man. He might be the best recruiter in the country. It would not shock me if they got 2 or 3 kids out of Florida from this cycle. So why not him too? That's kind of how I look at it. I don't want to count Penn State out for anybody, but especially like anytime Sider's involved. Just telling you, he is an elite recruiter, and kids pick schools based on relationships. We talk about it all the time. That is not going to change anytime soon either.
Those final 2 prospects from Florida, and then that rounds out the group. Again, Zahir Mathis could be officially added, but that's something Penn State's trying to work on. So, but if where there's smoke, there's fire. So I think Penn State highest priority should be to try to get one of the best prospects in the state of Pennsylvania on campus, especially when it's Ohio State that he is verbally committed to. But back to the Florida natives, and Naeshaun Montgomery and Samari Reed. I'll group them together because they're both wide receivers. But again, kind of the same thing here, Brian. This goes back to Braswell Thomas, who is a rising prospect out of the state of New Jersey. Samari Reed has very respectable talent. Naeshaun Montgomery, same case, but it's almost like, again, you have Jeff Exeter lined up. You have Lex Cyrus lined up. You just made a very good impression with Taz Williams. You can't take 6, 7 wide receivers. You almost have to pick at that point. It's good to see that Penn State is getting the final official visits from Samari Reed and Naeshaun Montgomery, so they're taking this seriously. But what are you doing? Are you hedging your bets here with other recruits? Like what? Just put into perspective how talented Reed are and Montgomery. I like them both, but I think Montgomery's probably going to end up with the Gators. Reed still, I think he probably ends up with an SEC school, but it's good to see that Penn State has their interest for them to use their final official visits.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I know Reed too. He's a big-bodied kid.
Yes.
Really good athlete. Plays down in the just north of Fort Lauderdale at Monarch High School. I saw him last year in the playoffs. Explosive, big body, going to play over 200 pounds in college. Take those kind of kids every time. Penn State would do well there. I don't know what the deal is with Montgomery, but look, Florida's in a weird spot. They got 5 commitments. They have not exactly been killing it on the recruiting trail. Do not count Penn State out. And he's got a lot of speed, plays at Miami Central, but he's originally from the East Coast. He's not a traditional Florida kid. I think he's from Delaware or Rhode Island. I can't remember which.
Okay.
So Penn State might have a little better shot with him than some other kids in Florida. Never know. Miami's not going to take him from what I heard. That could be somebody they get.
Interesting.
It's Miami's going big game hunting. They want Jamie French,
Yes.
Dallas Wilson, guys like that. Good luck. Those are going to be signing day deals, but they might get burned on that. But as far as Penn State, they're right there. They've been right there with Montgomery for quite a while. So if they have a great visit this weekend, it's possible. We'll see.
Montgomery's a speedster. I like, and he is taller, so he's over 6 foot, but he is one of the fastest wide receiver prospects. I like him to it. Again, do you take Lex Cyrus? And it's not that you can't have both, but again, at the end of the day, these prospects are going to look around. Okay, Penn State hasn't had the greatest track record recently with wide receivers in the past couple of years. They don't care about, oh, well, again, KJ Hamler was really good, and Chris Godwin, those are dinosaurs to them. Okay, those are legends that they look at. But they look at the recent history of 23, 22. Yes, Jahan Dotson was there, but Penn State, hey, they finished 7-5, right? Someone like Naeshaun Montgomery wants to see, how many other players are going to be there. And again, with that idea in mind that they just haven't had the best track record. So it's almost a prove me wrong instance where we've talked about this for a long time.
Yeah, I hate to project them with any receiver because, again, these kids want to see the actual results, but he's an East Coast kid, and they need speed. Like, he's what they're looking for, literally. So the fit is there. He's a good kid, by the way. He's a nice guy. I think they would do well as a match. I'm not saying that's where he's going to go, but, again, don't be shocked. Florida's not exactly a recruiting juggernaut right now. Used to be. I mean, it should be. It's Florida. It shouldn't be very hard. It should be even easier than Penn State, honestly. They got 5 commitments right now. That is not a typical Florida class for the middle of June. But obviously, Napier is on the hottest of hot seats. Penn State might be able to capitalize.
Yeah, Billy Napier sinking in the swamp. Who saw that coming? That is Brian Smith over on the other side. He is the recruiting expert for the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow him on X. You can follow his shows with the Locked On Seminoles. You can also keep up with his coverage specifically for Miami of Florida and Auburn and get a full comprehensive look at national recruiting in addition to the Southern States. Brian, thanks for the time as always. Penn State's still going to continue to make noise, even though official visits are going to be officially over very soon. And I can't wait to have those conversations again real soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
And as always, thanks so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. Be a part of the discussion down in the comments section. What do you think about Penn State's running back recruits? Who's going to stay with the Nittany Lions? Who's ultimately going to be the prospect that's left out? And what about the other prospects that are visiting this weekend? I want to know your thoughts on this group of official visits down in the comments section. If you enjoyed this discussion, leave a like on the episode, share it with friends and family. And if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations about recruiting, football, and so much more. Your favorite Penn State sports teams are all right here on the show. And of course, don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app.